Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. Today, it's our pleasure to have Dr. Waiel Awwad, a senior international independent journalist and political analyst, with us. He's the former president of FCC South Asia and a distinguished advisor of the Tilotoma Foundation. An acclaimed war journalist and commentator with decades of experience covering conflicts in West Asia and beyond, Dr. Awad offers unique perspectives on the region's political, social, and humanitarian challenges, focusing on Syria and its evolving dynamics. So, thank you, Doctor, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think we'll just jump right into it. How do your perspective or your take on Syria's role historically in West Asia and how that role would be evolving or changing post Assad?
Well, I think we need to see it. Very interesting question you put it, that we have to see it from a perspective of Syrian position. In fact, we were part of the colonial divisions of Syria and the rest of the Arabic world 100 years ago by Sykes-Picot, the British and the French after the Ottoman, and then divided Syria. Then they created Lebanon. Then, you know, how the Bilad al-Sham, or what we call it, the West Asian Syria, from Iraq to Syria to Lebanon and Jordan, was created into different states. So we were there. Then when we gained independence, Syria continued to be having lots of, coups, revolutionary. There were 4 times the CIA, the United States, interfered in the Syrian politics. And then they changed the government. That's acknowledged by the Americans themselves, not me. And over the years, we had the President, Ba'ath Party, President Hafez al-Assad, who gave some stability within Syria. Syria was trying to reconstruct itself. We had wars with Israel. We lost our Golan Heights in 1967, not because we wanted the war with Israel, but as per the Israelis, Menachem Begin, the former defense minister of Israel, he said, we provoked the Syrian to take the Golan, because Golan give Israel a minimum of 34% of their water to Israel. So our fighting with Israel has been on for over since the years, and we had the Pan-Arabism movement, and we had lots of changing the society from feudal into more of civilian society over the years, but returned our secular identity, moderate Syrian Islamic nation. But the Ba'ath Party was very much strict on religious party to be part of the government, because we had a problem with the Ba'ath Party in 1982 because of our the Muslim Brotherhood organization was quite active. And over the years, then the father died, the son took over, and the scene continued till the United States have decided in 1995 in its own policy of strategy of clean and break, then we decided to change regime by force. In fact, it started in Iraq, then they were planning in Syria, but they were planning 7 states, which included Somalia, Sudan, Libya, Syria, and Lebanon, and also Iraq as well. So that's what the American policy in Yemen. In fact, this is what they have stated in their statement. You can look into the history. So 2011, the Arab Spring started at the Tunisia, continued into Egypt, Libya, and spread to Syria, where the people had a peaceful demonstration for 6 months, asking for reforms, for political reform, changes, aspiration. People were quite interested in having a different government in Syria, but the government of Syria was very strict. And then the demonstration turned violent, and lots of Islamic group took over in the fight, and lots of mercenaries, in fact, have flown into Syria and smuggled through Turkey to Syria and to Iraq. And you remember Daesh, ISIS, the Islamic State was formed, and the Al Qaeda found the ground in Syria. So the leader of the current revolution in Syria, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, he was a cadet of the ISIS. He was the right hand of Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi in Al-Qaeda forming in Syria. And then he shifted loyalty from ISIS to Al-Qaeda, where he wanted to have independence. Then he left even Al-Qaeda. He created something called Jabhat al-Nusra, which is affiliated to Al-Qaeda. Okay. And then he changed into Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, where he presided over many groups which is having all Islamist group, and there were three major groups in that Idlib province who were fighting the Syrian government for years, supported by Turkey, by Israel, by the United States, by the West, by some of the Arab countries, and they wanted to topple the regime. And I think the decision of toppling the regime was not taken, recently. It has been decided by the American administration during Obama time that the Syrian government has to go. So if we combine all these together, we can say now the current situation in Syria, where the Islamist forces have taken over, where the regime has been thrown out, there is an aspiration in the street of Syria. People are celebrating, but at the same time, it's very cautious celebration, which worrying me, that we're losing territories to Turkey, who is ambitious in annexing Aleppo, the commercial industrial city of Syria, and Idlib, also the northeastern province, including the Israelis incursion into Damascus, where they are just 10, 15 kilometers away from Damascus. As I said, Golan was providing them with the water, and now the mountain of Hermon and all these areas are the tributaries of the oil discovered in Golan in 2015. So you can see the situation in Syria is unstable, and we don't know what the future is lying for ahead for our people. At the moment, it is a celebration, but when we have a saying in Arabic, when the ice melts, then the green will be showing what exactly is under the ice.
Definitely. And from our understanding is that Syria, as you mentioned, there are so many other countries that are evolved in Syria's history, in their administration. And that sort of leads to these factions. And what I want to get into now would be the faction dynamics. Exactly as you mentioned, we have the HTS, we have the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, you have the Turkey-backed Syrian National Army. So can you just shed light on such factions operating in Syria currently and how that could change, maybe a shift in allegiances for this new administration?
You see, I am a strong believer that the United States and the West use terrorism as a tool to achieve their political objectives. I mean, I have seen it in Afghanistan. I was with the American there. I was also seen it in Iraq. I was embedded with the American. And I know the system that they were able to topple the US Soviet Union in Afghanistan. They tried the same formula in Iraq and in Syria, and they realized in Libya. So therefore, terrorism has been one of the major objective of using it for their political achievement. So I think that is what the United States unfortunately is using, including Turkey, by the way. So these groups which has been active in Libya, and they came to Syria from all over the world, and even they acknowledged by some of the representative of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is still listed under the terrorist organization by the UN. And the Americans are in a hurry to remove it. Like the West now, they say it's a modern face, and they're showing that this is different. But the problem we are facing currently is that we have more than 65% of those mercenaries are from Uzbek, from Uyghur, Tajik, North African states, European, name it, and they're there. So can anybody explain to me where these people will go? For them, Syria become the new Emirates, Islamic Emirates. For us as a Syrian, we don't want you. We want you to be out of our country. We want to reconcile. We wanted to rebuild the country in a new image and change the dark ages, as the people say. It's a dark age of President Assad rule over the Syria. So I do not want that mass deception to change the track of Syria, of it's a sovereign nation, independent, and defend its own integrity and territorial integrity, sovereignty and territorial integrity. If we don't go into these things, then it is a big problem, because all these factions now, they're not even condemning the Israeli occupation. They're not condemning what Turkey is doing. They're not condemning illegal American occupation of Syria. Yeah. So I needed to understand the actual situation, reality on the ground. Is this a paying a price for these people? Are the Syrians allowed to run their own country? There was a meeting in Jordan where most of the Arab capitals have agreed and supported a change in Syria, supported a new government, implementation of 2254 of the UN Security Council resolution, calling for a political reform, re-establishing a new government in Syria. So I think it's too early now to judge the things, but other countries are taking full advantage of the current chaos in Syria, because once you dissolve the army, You have no army now. Once Israel destroyed absolutely 100% of Syrian power, might, and everything gone. So how do you depend and going to defend your country? It will take you decades to rebuild an army of 500,000 soldiers have left the army. So all these things will have a bad impact on Syrian future.
And I like the similarity you could say to Afghanistan in certain senses, where you see sort of the West sort of moving away. It does advocate for a very turmoil environment right now for development. And now that we have Mohammed al-Bashir sort of leading the caretaker government until the 1st of March, how do you feel that their engagement would be now towards, let's say, the West or Russia or such countries? Like, how should the approach be exactly?
See, as I said, if it is this government is meant for the Syrian people, I think it's a high time they should lift up the sanction, allow political reform, let the government establish, let the people of Syria decide their future by the people of Syria. Nobody, no foreign intervention. And I think the main reason for the fall of the government, in fact, is the harsh economic sanctions applied by the United States on us, and also which went for a decade. And that's the similar things, the replica they did in Iraq, and then the people have resented against the government. So there is a movement which created anti-government, anti-establishment. The worry to me actually now, it's not that the government is gone. I'm worried about my country. So there is no question about a new government without sovereignty and independence on their political decision. These are the two main things I wanted to see with this government. I think there are talks, but if these are factions, they wanted to integrate it into the Syrian society, give them some nationality. I don't know what's going to happen to these foreign mercenaries who fought alongside with them. What will be the role of Turkey? Turkey president feels that he is now the Ottoman Khalifa, and Syria is totally under his control. Even Trump acknowledged this, President Trump. So are we heading for disintegration of Syria? Or we will feel that the West seriously wanted to reconstruct and make Syria strong and have some commitment to international community and to the people of Syria that they will retain their identity. There will be no attacking, no decision, no seditions, no communal rights, no retribution. All these factors has to be considered. And I think if the West is in a hurry to lift up the tag of being a terrorist organization or no, that is for their own interest. But if you wanted to reestablish Syria as an independent state in the region, there are certain things has to be accomplished. And I'm sure we survived for 8,000, 10,000 years. We can survive this turmoil, though I am a little bit worried about my country at this current stage.
No, no, and that's perfectly valid. And moving a bit closer than the West, we look towards India and we look at Indian-Syrian relations. And India has always relatively maintained this principal positioning where they always advocate resolving Syrian conflict through non-military means. More importantly, adhering to UNSC resolutions 2254, upholding Syrian sovereignty, independence, so on and so forth. Now that Syria has entered into a new era of governing, administrating, and basically lifting up its people, how do you feel that India could aid, or what should be the strategy? In which areas of cooperation do you feel that India could sort of make that jump?
Well, let me say it very clearly on your channel. India has taken the lead in the international community of adhering to UN Charter and to international law, supporting the Syrian people, and non-foreign intervention in any sort in any internal affairs of any country. India has done exactly what should have been done. If the world have followed India principle stand, I think we didn't have landed in this mess. We didn't have more than half of the population being internally and externally displaced. We didn't have had this much of destruction of Syria. If this is seriously and living in a good environment, in a peaceful world, which we are not. So India, people who try to criticize India being close to a secular country, I think that is a wrong perception. The people don't know the history, don't know exactly what India was leading in the non-aligned movement, and India took the lead in the South-South cooperation. So Syria is part of this equation of India and the formula where India has been implementing. So India had lots of investments in Syria. We had not a single terrorist throughout our history till the Afghanistan came. We didn't have even in Afghanistan, not a single Syrian terrorist. Only after the American invaded Iraq and this influx of terrorists have come to Syria and to Iraq, and they have created this havoc inside our country. So these are issues has to be addressed. And I think India's concern of fighting terrorism, till date, the world does not recognize India, a draft which has been submitted to the UN as comprehensive fight against terrorism. So I think India will continue its support with the Arab world. Syria is a part of the Arab countries, a part of the Arab League, and I'm sure India's position will not change. Will continue supporting, rebuilding, rehabilitation, helping Syria to grow up. If Syria showing sign of fighting terrorism, fighting extremism and fundamentalism, and establishing Syria, as for the Syrian people, I think that the policy will continue. And remember, we have 2-3 Indian projects is already financed by the Indian government, which is not a very huge one. I mean, the BHEL carrying the Bharat heavy electric is carrying a project of electricity in Syria. And there was a steel factory, which is almost 250 million euro, the total investment of India in Syria. But I think future is bright. And I think if we are able to establish our country back, India will continue to have a good relation with the rest of the Arab world, including Syria.
And of course, when you see a region or specifically a country under so much militancy turmoil, we sort of think of the international side of it, but it's important to also look on ground and see what happens to the people itself. And this sort of brings us to a very long conversation I feel that we've had throughout the decade has been the Syrian refugee crisis. And you see a
Yeah.
situation where there are millions displaced. We see
Yeah.
a lot of hurt in the region. And what do you feel are the direct implications of this crisis? And what does that mean for our collective regional stability?
This is a very interesting question, and it's a very interesting development in Syria. If you look what they have done, the main purpose, the main cause of the refugees crisis all over the world is war and intervention and internal, externally displacement of the people. That is what sort of happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, in Syria, and Libya, and name it, and everybody has been forced because the West, who is worried about influx of refugees, they are the first people responsible for creating this crisis. Having said that, I would say that they have taken the creamy layer of the Syrian society. In our country, in Syria, we had a compulsory education and free education, medication. If you have a child between the age 5 to 7 years, you don't send him to school, both the parents will go to jail. So that was the system in our country. Now, with the refugee crisis, with the 2011 war, imagine a child of 7 or 8 years of age living in the border area in camps. He has, for the last 13 years, he didn't go to school. So what do you expect him to be graduated as? There is definitely a ground for a petty criminal, for a difficult life position, for compromising, for suppression, for oppression. Everything has happened to the Syrian people. So you are replacing now a society of a creamy layer of totally educated Syrians. 73% of the Syrian migrated outside Syria are 10 plus 2. 37% of them are postgraduate. Now, what will happen to the Syrian society after this much of gap? Are we able to reconcile, bring the social fabric together, let the people go back to school and study? It will take decades to rebuild a society, to rebuild a country of our own aspiration, of our own people. I would not sound pessimistic here, but I am sure that the world has to understand the Syrian crisis is not only the government created, it's also the West created this government. I am sure the previous government, have lots of shared responsibilities and to be condemned for leading to this crisis, that's for sure. But I will not give it only the tag for only the previous government. It's also the West who have mingled in our affairs, who have intervened, who have already openly supported terrorist organizations, funded them, armed them, equipped them, sent them into Syria. I think we need to learn lesson from what happened to Syria. The rest of the world, including India, has to learn what lesson is the West seriously is looking at. Are they looking for India strong? Are we looking, or are they going to send more mercenaries to try? Because all these terrorists tomorrow, Syria settle. Are they still sitting in Syria, or they're going back home to their home? If they go back to their home, whether they are Uyghur in China, whether they are Tajik or Uzbek or Afghan, all these people, what will happen in their own country? I think it's India cautiously can watch the development, understand, and address the situation, because fighting terrorism, by the way, cannot be fought individually. It has to be collective fight against terrorism. And I think we should support a Syrian motive for a Syria, not diverting Syria from its secular fabric into hardcore, if that will be difficult to. And the fallout of this actually is not over yet, by the way. I mean, the fallout, the impact on neighboring country, it will be widened with Trump presidency taking over. It will be a big impact. Maybe we go for a regional war, because Israel war on Gaza and Lebanon and now in Syria will continue, because nobody's stopping Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. He will continue to Iraq. He will go to Yemen. He will go then to Iraq, where we can worried about a regional war, where it will have an impact on the global peace and security and over the global trade as well.
Definitely. And doctor, I feel like it's one of those situations. You look at Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, whenever there is a drastic change in administration, I feel everyone expects it to get worse before it gets better. And I feel that Syria is in that situation currently. I think what's most important is that Syria shouldn't be forgotten throughout this whole process. I think that's what's important. And I think that's time for us as well. So I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Awad, for taking your time
Thank you.
and sitting with us. Truly, your insights on Syria and just the region in general, we really appreciate it. And we
Thank
hope
you.
to having you back soon for an update on
Thank
the.
you so
Thank you so
Sure,
much.
we will be happy. Thank you for having me, and hope that we will have a wishing list of having a better life for us and for our kids in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you covered everything on your.
Sure, sir. We've covered it. Well and good.
Uh, uh,
Uh,
you can just say, Dr. Waiel Awwad, I am currently the Vice President of MENA, Middle East North African State, and
Yeah.
distinguished, not advisor, distinguished fellow at the Rotoma Foundation. So you
Okay.
can say senior journalist or West Asia strategist. Cut it short.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. We
Okay.
make those changes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
And
sir.
when you telecast it, let me know. Send me the link.
Yes. 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 Sir. Definitely. Thank
Okay.
you so
All
much.
the best, young man. Keep the smile. You have a good smile.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, doctor.
Okay.